Okay, so welcome to another deep dive. And this time, we're taking a look at, well, what you sent us.
That's right. Straight from your requests. This one is about a new film.
The Amateur.
The Amateur, yeah.
Which is a spy thriller.
A spy thriller.
Apparently.
Yeah.
But based on a book. A Cold War era book.
Exactly. So there's that kind of interesting, I guess, juxtaposition, right? Between the contemporary setting of the film and then this source material going back to the Cold War.
Right, and you wanted to know kind of what makes it tick, right? Why this story now?
Yeah. What's the hook? What's the relevance today, especially given that historical context?
Yeah, and the review centers a lot around Rami Malek's character.
Charlie Heller,
yeah. Who's, this average Joe, like, ordinary guy who ends up becoming an assassin.
Well, not just any assassin. He kind of goes on I guess you could say a rampage.
Yeah.
Driven by grief after a personal tragedy, he kind of snaps and ends up blackmailing his bosses and diving headfirst into this world of killing.
Wow. Okay. So let's break this down a bit. You mentioned the Cold War connection. The original book, according to the review, came out in 1981, which, I mean, that's peak Cold War, right?
Absolutely. And there was even a previous film adaptation from that era. But what strikes me is this idea that the reviewer keeps coming back to, calling the core story evergreen.
Evergreen.
Yeah, like it has this timeless quality. So that begs the question, what is it about this premise that transcends that specific historical context? What makes it relevant today, even with all the modern updates the film brings in?
Okay, so think about it. You've got tragedy, you've got this personal vendetta, the allure of international locations, all that spy stuff, and then, of course, the fish out of water story.
The ordinary guy in extraordinary circumstances.
Exactly. These are all, classic narrative elements. They resonate regardless of the geopolitical landscape. So even though the original story was rooted in the Cold War, the filmmakers are banking on those core human experiences to carry the film, to connect with audiences today.
Makes sense. And the film definitely doesn't shy away from bringing the story into the present day. The review explicitly mentions things like murky international politics. I mean, does that ever really go away?
No, not really.
And then there's the inclusion of all this cutting-edge tech, like facial recognition software, voice analysis, all that stuff. It's a far cry from the Cold War era of, dead drops and coded messages.
Right, they're all a different game now.
And for you, that's a crucial point. These technological advancements, they completely change the stakes. Anonymity is almost impossible in this world. So how does someone like Charlie, who's essentially learning as he goes, how does he navigate this landscape?
Yeah, good point.
It adds a whole other layer of complexity to the story.
Now, let's talk about the people involved, because, man, the cast is stacked.
Oh, yeah.
We've got Rami Malek, obviously, as Charlie. Lawrence Fishburne is in it, playing the veteran assassin who trains him. Rachel Brosnahan is his deceased wife. Julianne Nicholson's the CIA director.
And then you've got Holt McCallany, John Bernthal, Katrina Balfe, Michael Stuhlbarg. It's a who's who of talented actors.
Right. So what does the review say about the characters?
Well, there are some interesting observations. Let's take Rachel Brosnahan, for example. She's playing the dead wife, right? The catalyst for Charlie's actions.
Right.
But the reviewer points out that we don't really get to know her beyond these idyllic flashbacks, mostly set in this Virginia farmhouse. Really picture perfect.
Okay, yeah.
But there's this one detail the reviewer mentions, and I thought it was really telling. They don't show her laughing under white sheets.
Okay.
It's like they're deliberately avoiding that cliche, that overly sentimentalized portrayal of the dead loved one. It suggests maybe a more nuanced approach to her character, even though she's not physically present in the story.
Right, yeah. It makes you wonder how deeply the film actually explores the impact of her loss on Charlie, or if it's mostly just a plot device to set him on this path.
Exactly. And then there's John Bernthal, who plays this cool guy super spy, according to the review.
Right.
But apparently his scenes don't really add much to the overall storyline, which, with an actor like John Bernthal, seems like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, totally. You'd think they'd give him something meatier to work with, so what did that say about the film?
Well, it could be a pacing issue. Maybe they tried to cram too much into the runtime, and some subplots got left underdeveloped.
Right. Or maybe they just didn't know what to do with them.
It's hard to say without seeing the film, but it definitely raises questions about the narrative choices.
Speaking of narrative choices, the film doesn't seem to shy away from showing off some exotic locations. The review mentions London, Paris, Marseille, Istanbul.
Yeah, definitely hitting all the classic spy thriller locales.
Right. But there's this curious detail about Charlie's initial aversion to travel.
It's almost like a contradiction in his character.
Yeah. The review says he doesn't travel internationally almost as a rule, but then suddenly he's navigating Europe with ease, jumping on cargo planes, blending in with migrants on buses.
And the thing is, the film never explains why he had this aversion to travel in the first place, or how he overcomes it so quickly. It's like that initial character trait just disappears once the plot gets going.
Yeah, exactly. You'd think that someone with that kind of reluctance to travel would face at least some challenges adjusting to a life on the run, especially in unfamiliar countries. But the review suggests it's a non-issue for Charlie.
Right. And that can undermine the believability of his transformation. If we don't understand his initial hesitations or see him struggle with this new reality, it makes his sudden competence feel less earned.
Right. It's like, oh, he's just good at everything now because the plot requires it. Not very satisfying.
Not really, no.
Okay, so let's get to the heart of it. Can this guy, Charlie, this self-proclaimed homebody who always plays by the rules, can he actually become a killer?
That seems to be the central question the film is wrestling with. And it apparently delves into the different methods of taking a life, exploring whether there's a moral distinction between, say, shooting someone point blank and setting a more elaborate trap.
Okay, interesting.
But the reviewer notes that this debate feels a bit repetitive throughout the film, and it doesn't really reach a satisfying conclusion, even after Charlie commits his first intentional kill.
You'd think that first kill would be a major turning point, right?
He would, yeah. Both for Charlie's character arc and for the film's exploration of this moral gray area. But if the conversation stays the same after that, it suggests a lack of depth.
Like maybe the film wants to have its cake and eat it too. Be both this action-packed thriller and this deep introspective character study.
And maybe it doesn't quite succeed in balancing those two elements.
So all in all, what's the critical verdict? What does the review say about the film's strengths and weaknesses?
Well, the reviewer definitely praises Rami Malek's performance, calling it intense and unique. They also acknowledge the film's stylish visuals and action sequences, specifically mentioning that impressive set piece involving a glass infinity pool that we saw in the trailer.
Oh yeah, that looked pretty cool.
So visually, and in terms of Malek's performance, the film seems to deliver. But there are some significant downsides as well.
Like what?
The reviewer points to uneven pacing, a runtime that feels too long for the story being told, and a general lack of emotional depth.
So maybe it looks good on the surface, but doesn't really have much substance underneath.
That's the impression I get from the review. And there's this interesting comparison to Harrison Ford in Patriot Games. The reviewer suggests that Malek doesn't quite pull off the ordinary man turned action hero thing as convincingly as Ford did.
Oh, that's a high bar to set, though.
Right. The reviewer acknowledges that it might be an unfair comparison, but it's still telling. It suggests that Malek's performance, while good, might not be entirely believable in that specific context.
So, final verdict. Should people go see this movie?
Well, the reviewer sums it up as a stylish yet uneven blend of espionage, thriller, and personal revenge drama.
Okay, that's a mouthful.
Basically, it sounds like it could be an enjoyable watch for fans of the genre, especially if you're drawn to Malek's performance or the film's visual style. But it might leave you feeling like it could have been more than it is.
So hopefully this deep dive is giving you a good overview of The Amateur based on what we've gleaned from this review. We've covered a lot of ground here, from the Cold War origins to the modern updates, the characters, the locations, the themes, the strengths, and the weaknesses.
And it all leads to a final thought for you. Given what we've discussed, what do you think are the essential ingredients for a truly great spy thriller in today's world? Is it all about the action and the spectacle? Or is it more about the character's journey and their emotional arc? Or maybe it's a delicate balance of both, something to ponder as you decide whether The Amateur is worth adding to your watch list.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Until next time.
See you later.